Just outside West Windsor, New Jersey, the life of a housewife is not going well. Fran Gladden Smith is 1 year into a marriage that is already showing signs of wear. To make matters worse, Fran has a broken hip and is confined to their 2-bedroom townhouse. Her family is concerned. Dina Weiss is Fran Gladden Smith's daughter. Sherry Davis is Fran's sister. Both live out of state and call Fran daily. On Monday, September 30th, their calls go unanswered.
The family's calling and nobody's getting any answers at the condo. She's, they're 3 flights up. She's on a walker still, hasn't taken her physical therapy to be able to maneuver steps. So where is she?
2 days later, the 2 women finally get a voice at the other end of the line. It's Fran's husband, John Smith.
I called John and I said, "This is Sherry, and to be blunt, where the hell is my sister?"
And he said, "Oh, I thought she was with you."
Smith's "I thought she was with you" excuse doesn't go down well. The 2 women press him to file a missing persons report. 6 days after Fran Gladden Smith first disappeared, John Smith finally turns up at the West Windsor Police Department, claiming he has lost his wife.
There never was any concern or emotion by Mr. Smith. It's just it was going through the motions.
Mike Dansbury is a cop with the West Windsor PD. 10 days after Fran Gladden Smith disappears, he reviews her case and sits down with her husband.
He was very vague in his answers, and to get any kind of information to try and help us in finding his wife, it was like pulling teeth.
Dansbury opens a missing persons file on Fran. 2 days later, Dina Weiss calls the detective.
And I said, "Detective Dansbury, my mother's dead." And he said, "No, she's with us. She's not with us. We can lay our hands on her, but she's with us." And I said, "No, she'd never do this to me. Never, ever do this to me."
Knowing next to nothing about Smith, Fran's daughter Dina Weiss and her sister Sherry Davis begin to piece together his past. They discover a prior marriage, one that ended with a divorce in 1974. Fearing the worst, Davis and Weiss begin a search for Smith's first wife, Janice Hartman. In March of 1992, they track down Janice's brother Gary, who confirms their fears. His sister, too, has gone missing. It's a story that begins 22 years earlier in the town of Seville, Ohio. In 1970, Janice Hartman and John Smith are both just 19 years old. They are married after a brief courtship. Janice's brother Gary is stationed overseas at the time. Gary later leaves the service and returns to the States. He visits the couple, now living in Columbus.
And man, it was like we invaded his property. And I mean, he knew who I was, and this was the first meeting that I had ever had with him.
Janice Hartman leaves her husband and returns to Seville. In November of 1974, she obtains a divorce decree. 3 days later, Janice disappears. A missing persons report is filed by the Hartman family and promptly forgotten by the local police. And that is the way the Janice Hartman disappearance sits from 1974 until 1992, when Sherry Davis and Dina Weiss get on the phone with Gary Hartman and begin comparing notes.
I sat down and cried really hard that night.
Brian Potts is a detective for Wayne County, Ohio. In February of 1992, he gets a call from detectives out of West Windsor, New Jersey. They ask Potts to pull up the missing persons file on Janice Hartman, now almost 20 years old. Potts and West Windsor detective Mike Dansbury review both files. The pattern is unmistakable. 2 women are married to John Smith. 2 women think of leaving John Smith. 2 women disappear without a trace. On April 9th, 1992, Mike Dansbury executes a warrant to search Smith's home, but it turns up nothing. Potts and Dansbury also bring the suspect in for questioning, again, to no avail.
Basically, he was sat there like a sponge, emotionless, just whatever we said, just take in, and just there was no reaction.
Without a body in either disappearance, however, John Smith leaves cold case detectives grasping at shadows until one day in May of 1999, when John's brother Michael gets in touch with FBI Special Agent Bob Hilland.
Michael is one of the only family members in this matter who had a conscience. Michael had a hard time living with the knowledge that he was holding deep inside him, and it affected every aspect of his life.
On May 14th, Michael Smith sits down with the FBI and unburdens his conscience. Michael's story begins in a garage in Ohio. In 1974, this was the home of the grandparents of John and Michael Smith. Next to it is a garage. One day, Michael Smith walked into the garage to find his older brother John constructing a wooden box. Next to the box were the clothes of a woman who, less than a month earlier, had divorced John.
John explained that he was building it to store some of Jan's belongings. And Michael was confused and asked, well, if you're going to build a box, why not build like a chest as opposed to this long, narrow box? John became very upset and animated and angrily chased Michael out of the garage. About a week thereafter, Michael returns to the garage and sees the same box, now completed, resting up against one of the walls in the garage.
Michael tells the FBI he forgot about the mysterious box, which laid undisturbed in the garage for 5 years. Then in May of 1979, Michael got a call from his grandfather.
And they opened the box and they discovered Janice Hartman's remains. And he recognized her face. Her hair was rainbow colored, it was multicolored, and he was adamant about that fact.
According to Michael Smith, his brother John drove 8 hours that night and arrived in Seville early the next morning. John denied responsibility for the box's contents, claiming Janice was a drug informant set up by the police. Michael Smith and his grandfather agreed to keep quiet. John Smith then packed the box into the back seat of his Corvette and drove off. Hilland asks, and Michael Smith agrees, to participate in a phone sting.
Hey, I got some serious deep here, John.
What?
Can you talk?
Yeah.
Okay, listen, you know that an FBI agent, that Bob Hilland son of a bitch?
Yeah?
Well, he got me a grand jury subpoena. I got to go to New York and testify in front of a grand jury.
Holy...
Well, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going there to New York, and I'm going to tell them the truth. Unless you got some idea.
No, I don't
Unless
have an idea.
unless there's some kind of something.
No, that isn't. I mean, that wasn't... I don't know what else to tell you. You know, that was a joke or something that somebody dropped off in the box. There wasn't Jan in it, but if that's what you believe...
John, that was Jan in the box. We opened the box up.
Okay.
Her fucking legs were cut off. Do you want me to continue?
The phone tapes convince cold case detectives of two things. Michael Smith is telling the truth about the box he saw in his grandparents' garage, and John Smith is far too clever to incriminate himself. For almost 2 years, Sherry Davis has stayed in the background as the FBI worked the case. Now, however, the sister of Fran Gladden Smith is determined to provide whatever steam she can to the flagging investigation. In early February, she calls cold case detective Brian Potts.
And I said, Brian, the letters went out for Ohio or whatever. But I said, you know, we now know he was in Indiana. And I said, I think we need letters to go to Indiana.
And about 3 or 4 days after I sent him off, I get a call from Jerry Berman saying, I think we have your girl.
So the investigation shifts to Indiana and a wooden box found in a cornfield. Alfred Hitchcock made them famous in North by Northwest. The Chicago mob soon followed. The loneliness of these cornfields providing ideal cover to dump a body. In the spring of 1980, a highway maintenance crew working this stretch of road discovers a box lying in a ditch alongside one of the fields. They're only half surprised when they discover the box is actually a coffin. Inside the box, investigators find the skeletonized remains of a young woman. Around the skeleton are what appear to be rolls of clothing and a blanket. Brian Potts secures a court order to dig up the body of the lady in the box from a pauper's grave in Morocco, Indiana. On April 24, 2000, forensics confirms what Bob Hilland already suspects. The lady in the box is Janice Hartman. After 26 years, cold case detectives have an eyewitness, a body, and enough evidence to arrest John Smith. On October 3rd, they do exactly that. Michael Smith's testimony, together with the box itself, provides a case that is overwhelming. 27 years after she first disappeared, the investigation into Janice Hartman's disappearance comes to a close. Her husband, John Smith, is found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to 15 years to life.
I want him to know that he may be here on charges for Janice. I still don't have my sister. So the fat lady still hasn't sang.